What's up, guys? I hope you're all well. Chadio here. Today, I'm checking out the animated history of Ireland. Let's check this out, shall we?
Hopping across the English Channel, we return once again to the British Isles. This time to Ireland, land of fairies and folktales, Christians and pagans, beer and whiskey, and a somewhat troublesome history that propelled the Irish to the world stage in the 1960s. But going back further, the tale gets pretty interesting, and that's certainly not a bias on our part. Welcome everyone to the Emerald Isle.
You being biased about Ireland there, bud? Love the animations in this series. I think they're really cool. Oh. Nice.
Ireland as we know it today is a single island entity and has been united for almost its entirety. This only changed in the 20th century when it became split between two nations, Ireland the country and the United Kingdom.
Yep.
Most of the Emerald Isle's modern citizens did not live before the split, which is why there still tends to be some bitterness about it on both sides. But leaving that aside for the moment, we can begin in 300 BC. The first inhabitants were our good friends the Celts, who migrated from the European continent after the last ice age. These Celts flourished in culture and traditions all upon the foundations of their pagan faith. Irish myth and folklore is deep intertwined into Irish poetry and even their later Christian beliefs.
Although that doesn't mean it's easy to find. Hi, Talebot here from the channel Tale Foundry. Unfortunately, a lot of ancient Irish traditions have been lost to time and inattention. The stories we do have records of are really cool: men who become gods, intricate pseudo-histories, an odd abundance of shape-shifting salmon, but it's hard to know whether they're legitimate because the majority of them were recorded by Christian scribes rather than their pagan adherents. On our show, we recently took a shot at unraveling the Irish mythological cycle and the mystery of why it isn't more popular. So, once you're done learning about Ireland's actual history, feel free to come discuss its pseudo-history with us.
We'll watch the pseudo-history. How about that?
The Celts of Ireland called their land Eire, after their matron goddess Eiru. They spoke a language called Gaeilge, or what we call Irish. One Irish tribe, the Scotti, is thought to have been the namesake of Scotland. Once again, English misappropriation defies the boundaries of cultural sensitivities. Christianity made its way to Ireland from Rome and Britain, largely aided by the Bishop St. Patrick, who managed to convert the Irish from paganism to Catholicism when he wasn't busy chasing snakes. Ireland was raided and settled by the Vikings in the 8th century, setting up small towns that became cities like Dublin and Belfast. But the Vikings were fought off and replaced by the Normans, who arrived in 1167, creating what would be the Lordship of Ireland.
Not very normal.
Norman Ireland failed to control the entire island though, and many lords and kings existed in tandem with the Norman possessions. By the 1400s, Norman holdings were limited, aided greatly by the War of the Roses and the Black Plague, which killed far more Normans than Irishmen. This changed with King Henry VIII, who took a break from cutting up wives and churches to conquer the various Irish kingdoms. He established the Kingdom of Ireland, which expanded after defeating the Irish in the Desmond Rebellions and the 9 Years' War. In 1604, Ireland was united fully under English rule, and James I of the Scottish House of Stuart became the King of England, uniting all three kingdoms under one monarch. The British, however, were Protestants, and the Catholics of Ireland felt resentment having a Protestant as their ruler, and rebellions were frequent. To gain better control, English monarchs confiscated land from the lords and farmers and replaced them with Protestant English and Scots. The British hoped that settling Protestants in the area would help quell rebellions by having a population with a distinct British national identity. This worked most successfully in Ulster, where some counties formed majorities of Presbyterians. During the War of the Three Kingdoms, Ireland staged rebellions from British rule, but were defeated by both Oliver Cromwell and later William of Orange shortly after the Glorious Revolution. Theobald Wolfton led a further rebellion which was brutally suppressed. At this point, the British said enough was enough and united the kingdoms into a single country in order to better control rebellions. The Union was still heavily prejudiced against Catholics though, and this coupled with the Great Potato Famine caused millions to die and millions more to immigrate, most notably for Liverpool and the Americas. The economic hardship and poverty created the Home Rule movement, in which the Irish citizens demanded their own parliament, with the notable exception of Protestant counties in the north, who were pro-unionist and supported British rule. This surprised entirely no one, since most of these counties were descendants of the British colonists, who had confiscated the Irish lands a century earlier. Home Rule stalled during World War I, leading some Republicans to stage a rebellion known as the Easter Rising. The British attempted to grant home rule by splitting the island into two self-governing territories, Northern and Southern Ireland, both of whom were still part of the United Kingdom. Fighting continued, however, and the Irish Civil War ensued, with some supporting membership of the British Commonwealth as a free state and others supporting a full republic. Although the Free State won the war, the Republicans did shortly get elected to Parliament and Ireland became a full republic. The split of Ireland angered many Republicans on both sides, who saw it as a British ploy to gerrymander the northern counties to allow for a slight unionist majority and ultimately retain a claim on parts of the island. The anger also came to further intensify the religious divide, since most Catholics saw themselves as Irish and supported republicanism, and most Protestants were pro-union. The bitterness of the Irish Civil War was felt everywhere, and discrimination against Catholics was increasing in the north. Peaceful civil rights protests escalated just 1 decade after the war in a conflict known as the Troubles, which is something you've probably heard of.
Yep.
Various unionist and nationalist paramilitary groups were formed and the fighting continued for decades. The conflict boiled down to the Good Friday Agreement, when Ireland and Northern Ireland agreed to exist in a state of tandem, and if the majority of Northern Irish citizens voted to rejoin Ireland, the governments would allow this to happen. The agreement also affirmed the free movement of people through the border and made allowances for any Northern Irish born in Northern Ireland to attain Irish citizenship if they desire. This largely brought the conflict to an uneasy peace. Kind of. Ireland joined the European Union in 1973, along with the UK and Denmark. The island became very prosperous and economic growth became a large source of immigration. They replaced the old Irish pound with the euro in 1999. The island's prosperity was halted in the 2008 global financial crisis, which significantly reduced Ireland's wealth. Many on both sides of the border have toyed around with the idea of reunification, and some have compared the situation to the division of East and West Germany. Resistance to unification is said to be waning somewhat, even though some are still fiercely opposed. The discomfort of the division once again came to a head with the vote of Britain to leave the EU, angering many who don't want to see a border erected between the two parts of the island. The slim majority of the Northern Irish voted to remain within the EU, bringing up a degree of resentment to the UK for forcibly removing them from it. Talks about the reunification of Ireland began immediately, and the idea has shown growing support, especially with the Scottish intention on holding a second independence referendum. Some view Irish unification as inevitable as older generations pass for an increasingly more liberal world, and yet others too are skeptical. I guess only time will tell. This video would not be possible without the...
I don't know if that's the end of the video. Let's scroll forward. It looks like it might be. But what do you guys think? What do you think if do you think Ireland will reunite Northern Ireland and Ireland? Do you think they'll reunite? Let me know down in the comments. I'm kind of interested to see what you guys think. I see it as very, very plausible, and I think it would be probably a good thing. But that's just one man's opinion. But yeah, with that being said, I want to thank you all for watching. Stay safe, and don't forget to wash your hands. Bye.